Hey everyone! In today's video we're going to implement bloom in OpenGL. This is a really cool effect that adds that soft glow around bright areas in objects, something you see in basically every modern game engine. My implementation is based on the approach from the OpenGL Shading Language Cookbook, and I'll walk you through it step by step so you can follow along, even if you haven't read the entire book. Let's start with a quick overview. Bloom is a post-processing effect that makes bright areas bleed light into their surroundings. It's not physically accurate, but it makes scenes feel more cinematic and less harsh. The idea is simple. Render your scene into an HDR frame buffer, extract only the bright parts, blur them, and finally add them back on top of the original image. That's it, 4 steps. Well, 5 actually, but we'll get to that. What's good about this technique is that some of the steps have already been covered in my HDR and tone mapping tutorial, so for more details make sure to watch it. The link is in the video description. The first step is to render the entire scene into an HDR frame buffer. This means a user-created frame buffer with the data type of RGB or RGBA, and F16 or F32, which is a 16-bit or 32-bit floating point. The advantage of these data types is that they allow a high range of brightness values, so Bloom actually has something to work with. The default frame buffer is usually based on an unsigned byte, which means only 256 values per channel. Anything above 256 gets clamped. So the default frame buffer is much more memory efficient while limited in terms of the range of values, whereas the HDR frame buffer allows a wider range at the cost of a higher memory requirements. F16 is of course half the size of F32 and often provides practically the same end result, so you should experiment with both and choose the one which is best for you. The next step is the bright pass filter. We go over the entire frame buffer, pixel by pixel, calculate the brightness level of each pixel and compare it to some threshold value. If the brightness of the pixel is above this threshold, the pixel goes through to a different frame buffer. If it's below, the pixel is dropped. Choosing the correct threshold is something of an art, so we should make it configurable to the user. Now comes the fun part. Blurring the target frame buffer from the previous step. We will use a separable Gaussian blur, meaning we blur horizontally first, then vertically. This is why I said the number of steps is actually 5. Blurring is implemented as 2 separate passes. And finally, we combine the blurred frame buffer with the result of the HDR frame buffer from the first step. This process is implemented as part of the tone mapping pass, which usually follows HDR rendering. We simply add the pixels from the 2 sources together, but you can control the bloom intensity using a separate knob. Before we jump into the code, I'd like to say a big thank you to Victor, who recently joined the 3D Underground. If you too would like to support this channel, you can do that at patreon.com/ogldev, or by joining the YouTube channel as a member. I've implemented Bloom as part of my demo framework, so let me go through the main points of the implementation. In the first step, we render into an HDR frame buffer. The main class here is the frame buffer, which is initialized with the width and height of the render target, the number of components in the data type, for example, 3 for RGB and 4 for RGBA, a floating point Boolean flag, and 2 flags to indicate whether a depth and a normal buffer should be created. In our case, we go with RGBA floating point, which in my case is F16 by default. We also need a depth buffer because this is where the main scene is rendered, so we need depth testing to work. The normal buffer is not required here. This class is implemented using DSA, or Direct State Access, as well as non-DSA. In the DSA case, we create a frame buffer using GL create frame buffers. The color attachment is created with GL create textures and GL texture storage 2D. We also set up the standard texture parameters. I have some code here to choose the OpenGL format based on the input flags. Right now it handles what I need. The depth buffer is created in a similar way, just with a different data type. After the color and depth buffers are created, we use GL named frame buffer texture to attach the color buffer to the first color attachment and the depth buffer to the depth attachment. Finally, we used GL named frame buffer draw buffers to enable writing into the color attachment. During the HDR pass, we bind the HDR frame buffer as the render target by calling GL bind frame buffer. Make sure to call GL viewport in case the HDR frame buffer has a different size compared to the default frame buffer. I will not go over the entire process of rendering into the HDR frame buffer because I assume that by now you already have something working. You know, setting up the shaders and vertex and index buffers and all that stuff. If everything is working correctly, you should have something like this. I use RenderDoc for debugging, and it allows you to see the input and output textures in every step. Next up, we have the bright filter pass. This is where we drop pixels that are not bright enough. This time, the HDR frame buffer is bound for reading. We activate the first texture unit and bind the color buffer to the GL texture 2D target. Next, we bind the first bright filter FBO for writing. The way this works is that the bright filter pass and the two blur passes are going to ping-pong between the same two frame buffers. So we have an array of two frame buffers called bright filter FBO. In the bright filter pass, we write into the first FBO. Then, in the first blur pass, we read from the first FBO and write into the second FBO. And in the second blur pass, we read from the second and write to the first. These FBOs are initialized to be 1/8 of the frame buffer on both the width and height. This is because these passes work well with a much lower resolution compared to the original, so we can save some memory. Their data type is RGB floating point because we still need a high range on the values. This is a post-processing technique, so we don't need a depth buffer. After binding the frame buffer, we clear it, enable the shader program, and set the luminance threshold uniform variable. The user can configure the threshold from the GUI and thereby let more or less pixels pass the filter. When we call render on the bright filter technique class, what happens is that we bind the dummy VAO that has no buffers attached to it. We simply call GL draw arrays to trigger the execution of the vertex shader 3 times. This vertex shader enables full screen processing by rendering one big triangle that covers the entire NDC range. Effectively, this is the same as a full screen quad, but using a single triangle. We use GL vertex ID to pull the corresponding vertex from a constant array of vertices. The position is mapped to the textural coordinates, which allows the fragment shader the full texture range from 0, 0 to 1, 1. The same vertex shader will be used for all the following steps, so from now on I'll just focus on the fragment shader. In the case of the bright filter pass, this guy is very simple. We sample the color from the texture, which happens to be the HDR frame buffer, and we calculate the luminance of the RGB pixel. Essentially, how bright the pixel is. This is a dot product between the pixel components and some magic trio of coefficients. We've already seen it in the HDR and tone mapping tutorial, so in a nutshell, the coefficients come from the Rec 709, which is an international standard color space for high-definition television and video. The coefficients simply reflect how sensitive the human visual system is to each color channel. If the luminance is above the threshold, and remember that we have a uniform variable for that, then we subtract the threshold from each component and output only the excess above the threshold. Otherwise, the output is black. Again, we can use RenderDoc to see the result. In general, we should see only the areas that are expected to receive the bloom effect. If there are too many pixels in the output or not enough pixels, we may need to tune the threshold. The next step is the first blur filter pass. The target FBO from the previous step is now the input, and the output is the second bright filter FBO. The first blur technique also uses the same full screen vertex shader, so let's jump directly to the fragment shader. In general, blur filters mix the color of a pixel with its neighbors using a weighted sum. These weights should decrease as the distance from the main pixel grows, so that closer pixels have a larger impact compared to the more distant ones. The Gaussian blur is a popular blur filter that uses a two-dimensional Gaussian function. The 1D version of this function is high in the center and gently falls off as we move away to the sides. The 2D version is simply an extension of the same concept to a plane. To implement the Gaussian filter in a single pass, we need to sample a 2D kernel around each pixel, multiply each sample by the corresponding weight, and sum up the results. This can be quite compute intensive, especially for a large kernel. But there is a simpler way, the separable Gaussian blur. Instead of a single pass, we have two passes, where the output of the first pass feeds into the input of the second. Instead of sampling a 2D kernel, in the first pass we only sample the pixels along a vertical line, where the current pixel is in the center. In the second pass, we do the same along a horizontal line. Since the results of the first pass are used as input in the second pass, this is equivalent to the full 2D kernel, only with fewer operations. Let's see how this works. First, we divide 1 by the height of the HDR frame buffer. This gives us the delta in UV space for each sample along the vertical axis. Next, we initialize the sum by sampling the current pixel and multiplying it by the first element in an array of weights. The size of the array is 10, but since the first element is for the current pixel, we have 9 weights above and below it. We loop over the remaining weights, starting from the second element and going all the way to the end. In each iteration, we process 2 pixels, one above and one below. We use the current texture coordinates as a base and add or subtract the same offset. The offset is a 2D vector with 0 on the x and the delta in UV space multiplied by the index of the current iteration on the y. The 2 samples, above and below, are multiplied by the same weight and then accumulated into the sum. Finally, the sum is the output of the fragment shader. This is how it looks like at this point. The second blur filter is almost the same. We have a delta x instead of a delta y, using the width of the frame buffer instead of the height. The offset is based on the x-axis instead of the y. Here's the result after the second blur filter pass. The only thing left is to calculate the weights. This is done on the application side because we allow the user to configure the variance of the Gaussian function during runtime. The calculation takes place in the blur filter 1 technique, which provides access to the fragment shader that we just saw. We prepare an array of weights, and for each element, we calculate the 1D Gaussian function at the corresponding location. However, simply using the Gaussian function for a weighted sum doesn't provide the correct blur. The reason is that for a weighted sum to be correct, we have to make sure that the sum of weights is 1. So we have to normalize the weights by dividing each weight element by the sum of all weights. But we have to be careful here. The center pixel is multiplied once, whereas the other pixels are multiplied twice. Therefore, we handle the first element outside of the loop and sum up its weight once. Inside the loop, each weight is accumulated twice into the sum. Finally, we have a second loop which normalizes each weight element and updates it into the shader uniform. The function that calculates the Gaussian value is an almost direct implementation of the original function. The square root in the denominator was dropped because due to the normalization that happens later, it has no effect on the end result. The same weight calculation happens in the Blur Filter 2 technique class, which provides access to the second blur shader, so we can skip it. Finally, we have a minor update in the tone mapping shader from the HDR tutorial. I've added a second sampler to provide access to the frame buffer with the results of the second blur filter pass. We sample from the texture and add the result to the tone-mapped color. There is also a bloom strength knob that allows us to tune the result. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial.